everybody, and welcome today. Whether you are joining us live on Facebook or you found us on YouTube, I'd like to welcome everybody. This is our next video in a series we're calling Wrangling Parenthood, presented by Chisholm Trail Pediatrics. I am your host, Shane Littleton, CEO of Chisholm Trail Pediatrics. I'm joined today by our expert, Dr. Andrew Cavanagh, once again, who's going to be talking to us about wrangling, toddlerhood. That's right, we're going to be talking about those terrible twos, those three-nagers, and everything in between. This particular topic literally hits home for me. As you know, I have a 2.5-year-old at home. We call her our Sour Patch Kid because she is very sweet, but she can turn into a little monster with a flip of a switch. So I'm looking forward to learning a lot myself today. Let's go ahead and get started. Dr. Cavanagh, welcome, and why don't you tell us a little bit about what makes you specifically an expert in toddlers?
Sure. I mean, outside of treating thousands of toddlers through my career, my wife and I are proud to say that we're veterans of 3 toddler wars. So I have a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 10-year-old, 2 of whom we raised from birth and all the way through toddlerhood and onto their later years. And then Jack, we adopted right in smack dab, developmentally, in all intents and purposes, as a toddler. And so we've lived it. Yeah, we have lived it. I wouldn't say we've loved it, but we've lived it.
All right, excellent. Well, let's go ahead and go on with the interview.
Cool.
First, what is a toddler?
So a toddler is basically that age range between 1 and 3 years of age, and so you have the infant, up to about a year, and then toddlers are like from 1 to 3. Some people even say 4 years. It kind of really depends developmentally on the kid. It's important to know that development's not always chronological, right? So it's not always exact. Like there's not like a time period like 3rd birthday they're done, or 4th birthday that is they're done. But some children who have delays like genetically or from trauma or from adoption or developmental delays, they might act like toddlers for many years past 3 years of age. So anyway, it's like usually 1 to 3 years of age, and then you got your like preschool age, and then older kids and whatnot.
And that can also obviously change if your child's diagnosed to be on the autistic spectrum or something as well.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. So it's not exactly chronological, but if we're going to look at like what is the simplest definition, I'd say anywhere from 1 to 3-ish.
Okay, excellent. So what's going on with these toddlers, man? Like,
right?
It's so difficult.
So to get in the mind of a toddler, I'm just going to be really dangerous. There are really 2 big stages of transition in growth from 0 to 18 or whatever you want to say. One transition is from infancy to childhood, and that's what a toddler is. They're transitioning from being an infant to a child, and then there's a second transitional phase going from a child to a young adult. And so that's what we think of like as puberty and adolescence, if you will. So sometimes people even call toddlerhood the first adolescence.
All right, excellent. So back to the tiny terrors.
Right.
With them, what's going on with these guys?
Okay, so like puberty is difficult because they're like trying to like set their own stage and be their own person. In some ways, toddlers are a little bit like that. They're going from their first stage of independence, really. Like they're actually able to move around. They're able to explore. They're more aware of their surroundings. They understand a little bit more. They also want to test their boundaries. So they are aware, they explore, they test their boundaries. And in fact, the word toddler really helps sum up like what's going on with these guys, right? So a toddler, like walking unsteady, right? So you get that whole walking component. They're independent. They can do that. They have physically now, for the first time, can actually move about. They're capable of walking. But at the same time, they're really unsteady. And so they can do it themselves, just not all that well. And so they'll fall a lot. So our job kind of is this balancing act between helping them to be more independent, like fostering that independence, but also guiding them to do it well. And I see there are 2 sides to this ditch. Some on one side of the ditch, you get the overprotective parents that kind of don't allow them to explore their independence as much. And then on the other side, the temptation is to kind of a little bit more latitude, maybe a little bit more than they need. and these kids don't learn rules as well. And so it's kind of parenting this age is challenging because we want to fall in the middle and be careful of not falling on either side of that fish.
So you don't want to, quote unquote, over-parent to be so rigid that you're catching them every time that they fall.
Right.
Sometimes you want to let them fall a little bit, but then you don't want to be so laissez-faire
Right.
where they're in danger.
Right.
They don't understand consequences of
Exactly.
and stuff like that. Okay.
And honestly, as far as parents go, when I see both sides of it, I truly don't ever assume or even believe that it's because a parent is willfully doing it. It's just, it's tough. And so we really want the best for them, but sometimes it's tough to let go, and sometimes we let go a little too much, and we want to give them freedom. And so I think that there's that challenge.
There's also that change between the first child and the second child.
That way, it's second and third, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so our parenting change, our parenting styles change, and that's okay. In fact, if you look at personalities between birth order, they're very different, and for a reason, but they're all good, right? They all have their advantages. So.
Very, very cool. So, I'm a parent. How do I help my child, my toddler, develop?
So, I would say, first of all, if someone asks me what is the most critical thing that you can do with your child, it's engage them, right? Engaging your child, being with them, spending time with them, trying to help them explore. And one of the ways that we can do that is reading. Reading is really important. It helps develop their language. It's time that we spend together. It gives them an interest in books. It gives that bonding time. It gives that creativity. It teaches the idea of stories and imagination. So reading is really important. And one of the things that I've heard that I really love and I think that is helpful is if you can help a child learn to read, then they can read to learn. So you give them an independence in their own development and learning long term.
Very cool. I know one thing I did with my older son and trying to do with my daughter now is trying to find books and things that we both like. Because sometimes when you get to bed, you're like, man, I got to spend 5 to 10 minutes reading the same book over and over again.
Right.
It's not always a bad thing. But I even read one of those parenting books for dads.
Right.
My wife was pregnant with my son. It said reading Sports Illustrated. Why not?
Right.
Then I'm reading something that I enjoy, and eventually, she might like that. My son and I read Star Wars books and things. So we read out of his children's Bible, which we both enjoy.
Right.
And so now reading time is kind of cool for both of us. It's not so mundane as a parent. That's one thing that we still do. But what if my kid won't sit still for a book?
Okay, so the very first thing I have to remind parents and encourage them is, guess what? Sitting still is not required. So if you're trying to read to your child, especially at night, and you have one of these rambunctious children who just doesn't want to sit in your lap very long, first of all, drop the guilt. It's okay. You don't have to force them to sit and read. They can run around and play around the room and you're reading. They're still going to hear you. And they're still going to pick up that, hey, my dad's reading, or my mom's reading to me. So I think that's an important point to remember, that they don't have to sit still and read. You can keep reading to them. But also consider that maybe if they're getting up and running around, maybe you need to engage more. Again, not putting this on blame on anyone, saying it's because that you're not entertaining enough that they're getting up. Some kids are just super rambunctious. But it does bring up the point that you can try to do your very best to try to engage them. So there's a couple points and tips that you can do to try to engage them when they're, for that brief still moment that you have them. If you can engage them, maybe they can be more, they might actually sit there because they're more involved in it. So first of all, you want to read slowly enough so that they can hear what you're saying. You want to be expressive, right? Use your hands. Use different voices and good accents and stuff like that. Like they like that. It's goofy. It's silly. The more ridiculous you can be, a lot of times it engages them, right? They like that. Although my son hates when we use different accents. I try to make him laugh with it. And he's like, just read normal, Dad. But I get entertained by it, so I keep doing it sometimes. But use different voices. Raise and lower your voice. Really engage. Make it more dramatic if the opportunity arises. Sometimes using your hands, using gestures, using finger plays, like I don't want to go here. No. Like using your fingers, and or also like the itsy bitsy spider kind of thing. Like they can use their fingers and stuff. So the more that you can engage them tactile, not just verbally, but tactile. Also, they can like clap or sing. When there's certain things, you might want to sing parts of books, right? You might even find there's books that engage them more because it involves more tactile stuff, like pushing a button or rubbing a page or squeezing something or singing or clapping or dancing to different things. As you're reading, especially as older kids are a little bit older, ask opening questions like, oh, why do you think the lion is going to go in that room? Like, ask them what they think. And this really helps develop literacy, the idea of asking questions and engaging into the story. Again, that's a bit of an older concept, maybe a little bit past toddlerhood, but it's still helpful. Sometimes use the kid's name, like then Parker went to the, then Parker, got in the X-wing, like using their name, it engages them into the story a little bit more. So, and above all, the most important thing is have fun.
Absolutely.
Do, like you said, enjoy a book that you like. Show them that reading is fun. Enjoy it. Enjoy the process. The more that they see that, hey, dad or mom really likes books and they have fun with it, they will also eventually start engaging and having fun too. So those are just some tips that we can use to make reading more engaging. It really helps with the kids. But if they're running around and it doesn't seem like they're paying attention, still do it because they are human beings.
Right, and so don't read at them, read with them.
Right.
And there are actually books out there that you can incorporate your child's name in them. I know both of my kids have one, and it's about Parker, or it's about Raylan trying to find the letters of her name. And you can make these things online, really cool.
That's cool.
And so those really help too. So getting back to toddlers, should we read longer to them or with them as they get older, or should we flex the duration of how much we're reading to them? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so naturally kids, as they age, their attention span gets longer, right? So, and thankfully the books reflect this, right? Like a 1-year-old is going to have Pat the Bunny. And it's a really short book. It's not War and Peace by any means, right? Pat the Bunny and Pat the Bunny, and they're more involved. And as they get older, they're going to show more interest in the longer books anyway. Like Good Night Moon, you're not at the beginning. It's like Pat the Bunny, and then you go to Good Night Moon, and eventually you go to Hop on Pop, or you go to longer books, right? So I would say as they get older, it's important to know that their books are going to get a little bit longer, and that's okay. Here's the key, though. They're also craftier as they get older. And that one more book sometimes isn't because they have this amazing love for reading, but sometimes it's because they're smart enough to know if I get one more book, it means I don't go to bed.
Right. So
one more book longer.
Yeah.
Right, I work the system. So have a set number up front, like we're going to read these 3 books. And sometimes it depends on how you want to do things, how you want to play it, but maybe have a margin for one more book as an encore. Like if you're just, please, one more. Okay, but you already planned ahead. Like you're smart enough to know, kind of like an encore, at a concert. You're like, okay, we already planned on that set. We've got that. We've got this book back here. One more book, good. But no more after that because it's really valuable. As valuable as reading is, it's really important to set a bedtime routine and keep to it.
Very good. Okay, so read, parents. I think we got that down, and you did a very good job of telling us why that's so important for our children, especially our toddlers. What else? What else can I do to help my toddler develop? So keep in mind, playing is how toddler, that's their job. Playing is how they develop. Like playing is the most important thing a toddler does. It's how their brain grows. And so the more they can play, actively play, not watching the device, guys. I know it's really easy to do, and I've fallen in that trap before. But actual active playing, exploring their world, looking around, doing things, and playing with you or playing with someone else is their job. And so you have to be very creative and asking them things like, hey, what's that? Or, hey, can you find the cereal? Or can you help me find this? Where is that? Do you see anything blue in here? So you ask them things. You do puzzles with them. You do little shape sorters. You take them out of the house and go outside with them. Like, hey, let's find a rolling. What is that? Oh, that's a rolling pony. Can you pick it up? Can you touch it? Oh, look at that. So the more you can explore with them, and then the other is making sure that when they're talking with you, because they're going to initially, one of the
developmental things language-wise is they're going to say like, bottle, like, oh, bottle. And then you add to that, oh, would you like your bottle? You're adding words to them so they're picking up the whole sentence. They're only saying one word, but you're adding it so they learn just by being saturated with your narrating everything they do.
Got it. Okay.
So those are some ideas of other things we can do to help them.
Very good. So let's talk a little bit about discipline. I know that's a hot ticket item. How do you discipline a toddler?
I find electricity is the absolute.
Central Pediatrics is not condone electronic child.
Teasers, man, they're going to have a child and a taser on them. So, the most important concepts that I can pass it on to any family member or any patient or any friend is that say what you mean and mean what you say. It is very important. Kids want to know they need consistency. They need toddlers are still learning the world. And when you're learning the world, you need to see consistency. They don't get the idea of exceptions yet, so they need consistency. Consistency in praise, consistency in follow through. When you say you're going to do something, you do it, which just means positive things, but also means like consequences, right? So we need to be very consistent. We need to be consistent, we need to be predictable, and we need to follow through. So to do that, it's important to, ahead of time, to have a game plan, right? Like, what's my game plan when I go to the grocery store? What's my game plan at bedtime? What's my game plan at mealtime? When they do this, I'm going to do this. Thankfully, we're ahead of the game to anticipate some of the things that they might do. So it's important to have a game plan, and so that we're not reacting out of emotion or frustration, but we already know they're going to do it. We have a game plan, and that's really critical. So just keep in mind a few concepts. First of all, toddlers, they're just learning the rules of life. So let them know family rules, house rules. We don't hit, we don't run, we don't yell. Certain things. And oftentimes it's good to teach a couple rules at a time because it's hard to learn 8 rules as a kid, but a couple of rules that you really want to focus on at a time, and then you move on. So the others you have to be a little more gracious with because you're still learning a couple of rules, but then you focus on other rules once they kind of move on. The most important thing you can do is praise. We want to praise good behavior. Raising a kid, kind of like raising a dog, guys. And
reward with a treat.
Right, you want to reward them. When a dog sits, you don't tell a dog no, you tell a dog sit, and when you help them to learn to sit using a treat, and when they do sit, you say, good dog, good sit, right? You don't just keep scolding them and beating them. You get them to sit and you praise them because they see what you're wanting them to do. Same thing with kids. Find the behaviors you want to encourage, and when they're doing that behavior, you praise them and praise them and praise them. Praise is important because it's bonding, and it's the most effective. It's not coddling, it's not spoiling. It really isn't. It is just effective. It's practical.
Okay, so the old Cavanagh rule, positive reinforcement is better than negative reinforcement.
Absolutely.
Applies to kids.
Absolutely, exactly. Right? Yeah, and so I get a lot of parents that come in and they're like, I'm on school, and I want to come back and say, I get it. I'm not disagreeing with your value that kids need to be respectful. Right. But if we want to be effective, the most practical way is just lots of praise. It works better. It is the most effective. So if you want to be effective as a parent, just think of it that way. Kids are going to test you, though. Just remember, they're doing that on purpose. It gives them a security. They are testing things. They're going to test you on your rules. And it's important for them to test you because they need to see consistency. I see kids all the time, they're playing with the light switch. On, off, on, off, on, off, off, on, off, off, on. And they're doing that because every time you do this, it does. Yep. Is this something I can depend on? Right? Is this world, this light switch controlled? Yeah. Is it something I can depend on? Like something I have a security behind, right? Like when I drop the ball, every single time, it falls to the ground. Is gravity always the gravity? Absolutely. So your rules need to be like gravity, always. So because it gives children security. Secure kids are happier kids. And they're also more well behaved, but most importantly, they're happier. They need consistency in your following through with rules.
And earlier you mentioned something about correcting opposing behaviors. Right. What do you mean by that?
Okay, so One of the, this is a very upside down way of thinking things, but it's a really helpful way of thinking things. So if you want kids to, for instance, not yell in the house when they're being quiet, if you can find that moment when they're being quiet, then you say, wow. First of all, you need to tell them the rules, right? We don't yell in the house. But if you can find that moment when they're working on it, and you tell them, wow, good job. You were being quiet.
More and more praise.
Right. They're going to start being quiet more often. Okay. If you tell them, man, you're yelling, if you keep focusing just when they yell, then you're going to get in the habit of the negative consequences, which, interestingly enough, they're giving attention. And often, very often, negative consequence, like you giving them negative attention, will cause them to do it more. Mm-hmm. So they're going to act out in whatever action more on whatever consequence, like whatever feedback you give them. So try to find the moments that you can give positive feedback so you can encourage the positive things. So one way to do that is make a list of the things that you see that you want them to change, like I don't want them to hit. So you write, don't hit. So when you see them, hey, good job for not hitting. It could be like for 2 seconds. Good job for not hitting right now, right? It's really helpful. Or at the dinner table, hey, good job for sitting in your seat. It could be the first 5 seconds. They see that, hey, oh wow, they like that I'm doing this, and they're going to, hopefully, they're going to continue that.
All right, so don't just focus on the negative. Be aware of the positive, and then praise the positive even in the middle.
Right, and it's hard because it's much more active. You have to be much more engaged and pay attention to those moments because the negative behaviors stand out.
Right.
It's the positive behaviors you have to actively look for and go, oh, I see that, I can tell them, good job.
Great. All right. I know a common discipline technique that even I use in my house is timeout.
Right.
Can you walk me through how you handle a timeout type situation?
So first of all, it depends on how you want to do it. Some people don't give warnings. Oftentimes, I think it's okay to give one warning, like, hey, you can be quiet. If you're loud, you're going to go to timeout, right? If it's a specific discipline thing that you really want to discipline, so you give them a warning, and then if they disobey, now they've seen they've actually crossed the line willfully, then you calmly explain as you are, I'm putting you in timeout because you were loud when I told you to be quiet. And then you say nothing else. You don't scold them. You don't lecture them on why should we be quiet. None of that. No more talking. You don't yell at them. You don't show this. You just walk them like a robot. You've told them, hey, you broke the rules. We're going through timeout. And so much like if, a police officer, he doesn't explain why you shouldn't speed. He just gives you a speeding ticket. I'm sorry I got you speeding. You're speeding. Here's your citation. They don't have to spend time on explaining to you. They don't lecture you. They don't scold you. They don't yell at you. They just give you a ticket. So then you put them in a chair or a room or a place in the house that's distraction-free, where they have to sit for a certain amount of time. Usually we say 1 minute for every year and age. So for a 2-year-old, it's like 2 minutes. 3-year-old, 3 minutes. 4-year-olds, not. And then one thing that's really important is they might be loud and talking to themselves and whatever, but they have to be quiet for at least 5 seconds at the end of timeout before they're letting you out of timeout. And you pull them out of timeout. It's over.
Okay, so what if you're like my 2.5-year-old at home and you physically cannot get them to sit anywhere? I mean, unless I want to go over and physically hold her down, which I know is probably counterproductive.
Right.
What do you do if they just keep on getting up? They won't sit for 2 minutes. They won't sit for 10 seconds.
Right. So 2 words, bungee cords.
Yeah.
I should have said duct tape. Duct tape. Duct tape, right? Bungee cords, right? And that probably really flies with the AAP. Dr. Cavanagh says, take your kids to a chair. Really, you have several options. You can decide that, hey, a chair isn't the right place, right? So you could put them in a room that's a safe, well-lit room, right? That doesn't have distractions.
No toys.
No toys, exactly. So you could have a timeout room. Sometimes people even use the bedroom. I'm not sure if that might send a mixed message, that your bedroom is not like a really negative place, but for some people it seems right. It's some people that works really well. So you can do a room. You could stand by the chair and continue to just robotically, not even look, talk to them, and over time, if you do that, that is something that often, if you continue to return to their chair, it might take a long time, weeks, but eventually they get the idea that I'm not doing anything, I'm just going to sit here until I can finally be done. Or you can put them in the chair and then tell them, if you get out of your chair again, you lose a privilege, and then you add on to another discipline on top of it. So really there's some different options. The key is if you're consistent. You got to be consistent in whatever you decide to do, and if you invest long enough, eventually you're going to realize that you're more stubborn than they are, and that's really critical.
Being more stubborn than your toddler, folks.
It takes a lot.
Yes. All right. Something that I know is a little bit controversial, but spanking. I know it's not something that my wife and I have ever really done, but I've heard some parents that do, some very good parents who I really respect, practice this. Give me your professional opinion on spanking.
You hear this both sides all the time, right? Spanking used to be a mainstay in discipline, right? You see a lot of everything. Yeah, exactly. I remember getting a paddle when I was in middle school. I remember in middle school, my coach whooped me one with a big wooden paddle because I got, I think, a beat or something. I can't remember what it was, but I was on probation or something like that. But I did okay in school, by the way, afterwards. But I remember that paddling was a normal thing, and grandparents a lot of times will tell you, I used to spank, and it never ruined my kids. And on the other hand, nowadays you get that, any kind of touching your child is child abuse, and the AAP even is extreme on their stance on we never ever touch a child. And I understand some of the values behind that, right? Like that we want to be careful on not encouraging violence as an answer, but I don't always think that that's necessarily true. I do think, I kind of feel like I'm on the middle ground of that. I do feel like there might be a place at times for spanking, for corporal punishment, if you will. It's another tool in the toolbox. I think it should be a specific event-related discipline, at least in our situation. I recommend spanking or maybe slapping the hand in situations where it is a life-threatening thing that the child is about to do. So if your toddler is about to poke their finger in an electrical socket, we would, when our kids would do that, and we're like, oh, go to electrical socket, we would slap their hand gently, but enough to get their attention, like, hey, no, we don't do that, because a slap in the hand is a lot better than they were about to get by putting their finger in an electrical socket. So those are the kind of things that we wanted to get their attention on, or if they ran out in the street. So I found that those kind of like jolting events were really helpful. I do think in general, if you can praise up front and use timeouts and remove privileges, those seem to be more effective if you can tackle them up front. But that doesn't mean that spanking can't have a place. But it has to be something that's very carefully thought through. And one of the most important things is if you ever spank your child, if you decide that's something that's important to do, if they did something really that you need to really correct, you should never spank your child in anger. You need to make sure that your emotions are in check. If it takes time to calm down, you're not doing it because you're responding in emotion, because then it is violence. But if you're doing it because you feel like this is the way to help reset their thoughts, that's really up to you, but never, ever do it in anger. So a lot of times it's important to take time before you do it. Calm down, then go back in.
See, that's the right appropriate action for your child to get the result you're looking for. Correct. Gotcha. Okay. So there are two times that are very difficult, more difficult than different parts of the day for toddlers, and I have kind of found out that's mealtime and bedtime. So we're going to talk about both of those. Let's start off with mealtime. Most toddlers are picky eaters and just refuse to eat at all. Obviously, as a parent, we want our children to have a healthy, balanced diet. But how do we battle this? How do we be more stubborn than that toddler and get them to eat the nutritious food?
All right. I feel like I'm going to be a broken record here, but positivity is really important. It's actually pretty universal at this age for toddlers to start. Their taste buds are kicking anymore. They actually start developing preferences. They're more independent. They realize, hey, I like this, I don't like this. That's okay. It's okay for them to have preferences. So we want to embrace that. I when my talk with parents on picky eating involves peace, lots of peace. So you want to be positive, right? We want meal times to be pleasant. If they're a war or a battle, it really doesn't set the stage up for success. It sets it up for failure. So we want to be positive. We want to be patient. I mean, toddlers, you got like what? Anywhere between 17 and 15 to 17 years with these kids to help build their repertoire now, build them back up. Yeah, sure, they might have eaten green beans when they were 1, but they weren't really eating them. They didn't get the idea of it. They didn't have much choice. They didn't have much independence. Their taste buds weren't fully kicked in. So you have years to build up their menu or their palate, if you will, of different foods. So you want to be positive. You want to be patient, but you also want to be persistent. You don't want to just go, well, I guess I don't like green beans. We've tried it twice. I don't like it. Let's just give them mac and cheese all the time instead. So you want to be persistent, but positive. Like, hey, try it by. As they get older, initially this isn't something you can do, but as they get older, you can have them help pick. So the other piece, pick, preparing, and practice. So you have them help pick. Like, okay, mommy's going to go to the grocery store this week. What vegetable are we going to try this week together? And so tell me which one you want to try. You can show them pictures, you can talk about it, you can take them with you so they can pick. Hey, we're going to try Brussels sprouts this week. Okay, great. And then they can help prepare it. Okay, whether that's when they wash it, or they help put the season on it, or they cut it, or they put it on the plate, then you can say it's theirs. Like, hey, we're having raised Brussels sprouts tonight, guys. And that's so exciting, right? We're having your Brussels sprouts. Everybody, look, it's raised Brussels sprouts. And then we tell them it's a practice. Like, hey, guys, we're practicing these vegetables.
Very cool.
And I always like to separate it from them and not say it's on them, but more their tongue. Like, your tongue's not good at this yet. That's okay. It just needs practice. So we're going to give your tongue practice.
Your tongue will get there.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Your tongue will get there. So it doesn't feel like it's almost like you're trying to get them on the same side as you. You and I are on the same side, and your tongue is on the other side. I'm not against you. You and I are against your tongue. And we're trying to get your tongue to be better.
It's not your fault.
Right.
Okay, so I know we've all done it. How do you feel about rewarding eating healthy food with eating bad foods? A la, if you eat your green beans, you get dessert.
Honestly, it depends on how you look at it and the extent of what you're doing. I think you can teach a healthy view of eating by doing it, by looking at it in a healthy way. I like to look at food in almost like an 80-20 rule, that 80% of what we eat should be fuel and should be helpful to our bodies. But 20% is for us. Like, food should be enjoyed, right? Like, unless you have an allergy, there shouldn't be anything that you can never eat. We should enjoy food. And so if you have that kind of healthy view, and that oftentimes explaining it that way is more for older kids, but if you can approach it that way for the younger kids, I think it's okay. So if you can kind of balance it, like, I'm not just going to overwhelm them, but say, hey, you know what? Good job on eating your green, trying a green bean. Would you like to try something, like a little bit of dessert too? I think that's okay. I think it's positive reinforcement. I think it acknowledges that, hey, some food we just eat through and we're working on, and some food is fun, and I don't see anything wrong with that. I think you can go to the extreme, you have to moderate it, but as long as you're moderating it, I think you're okay.
So as long as I keep coffee less than 20% of my diet, I'm fine.
I mean, 50%?
Okay, so that's mealtime, but as a father of a toddler, the biggest monster, at least for me, is bedtime. So let's spend a little bit of time talking about sleep hygiene with a toddler. First, how many hours of sleep do you recommend a toddler get?
Wouldn't it be great if it was like 24?
Yeah. Nice.
So from 1 to 2 years of age, it's like 11 to 14 hours.
Okay.
And then from 10 to 13, it's a little bit less. And for 3 to 5, it's a little bit less. It's like 10 to 13 hours. So usually, if you can kind of think about for both ages, anywhere like 12-ish is about the mid-range for both. For any toddler age is about right. So sleeping the important thing is consistency, bedtime routine, and when you go to bed, and what you do for bedtime. Those are the things that help the most for sleep.
You talked about that routine before. Book, brush your teeth, put on pajamas,
right.
Or might be go to bed. Okay, and then you're supposed to leave the room.
Right.
Right?
So you have a routine, you have a set time for bed that's pretty standard. You do the same things, and then, like you said,
leave the room.
You leave the room.
Which is the most difficult part of the process. So what do you do? Obviously, when your toddler's like, no. You get back over here in the form of screaming, crying, or literally just getting out of bed every time.
Right. So I hope that some people are listening to this pre-toddler or like early toddler, because this is so much better to do beforehand. If you can establish a set pattern beforehand and it's always you just carry it through, that's so much better. But I mean, you never see that issue, right? Like the concern is we've kind of missed the boat a little bit. We all do it. And then now we're in that part where you're trying to like, hey, no, I'm going to leave the room now. So I think the best approach is you have to be consistent. And I think that you have to be consistent with your bedtime, and you can't extend it any further, and you tell one of the tricks in the trade, like if they're screaming and crying, I think one thing that's really helpful is you just kind of tell them, hey, I'm going to come back and check on you. So I'm leaving the room, I'm really close, I will come back and check on you, and then you do that. And hopefully they're asleep by then, but checking on them I think is really helpful. And early on, the first several weeks, you might check on them, they're still there, you can kind of calm them down a little bit, and hopefully over time they get more and more comfortable, and then you check on them at a longer time period, and eventually they're asleep, and always still check on them even though they're asleep, so you can be honest with them that you did check on them, and eventually over time they get more comfortable with you kind of weaning them off of you, if they're already in that stage of they are fighting it.
And a little piece of advice, WD-40 that hinges on your door. Because if you're coming in and checking on them, and you're waking them up every time, is a little counterproductive.
Nice.
Yes, from personal experience. Okay, so I know you mentioned read.
Right.
Excellent for child's development. What's more important though? Reading them that bedtime story or getting them to bed on time to be consistent with the bedtime routine? Just because I know as they get older, you have older siblings with soccer practices, and adults have sometimes later night activities. You're getting home right at bedtime. Do you read that book and extend bedtime, or do you skip the book and go right to bed?
So it kind of depends, right? So reading, in as much as it's part of the routine to help them calm down and wind down, is really helpful. If it's late, they have a sporting event, whatever it is, and they don't really need it, and they're able to go to sleep without it, then reading is still important. You can do it other times. But if you notice that, even with those crazy nights, they're not falling asleep, sometimes you still have to do reading, maybe just do a shorter story with them.
All right, fair enough. Let's talk a little bit about outings. We're almost out of time, but let's say you're taking your toddler to the grocery store and they want everything. And if you don't give them everything, what do? They start screaming. So how can we keep them distracted enough so us adults can do adult-like things like grocery shopping?
Right, so critical things. First of all, have a list ahead of time. My wife has really gotten brilliant at this. She makes her list based on where it is in the grocery store. So when she fills out the list, like on the refrigerator, we write the list, we write the items where they are in the grocery store. Top being the right side of the grocery store, bottom being the left side of the grocery store. So it's like she reads the list and she can just go through the grocery store and get out of there as fast as possible. So have a special toy or a special game or whatever it is, or a book that's only allowed at the grocery store. That's another idea. So you go there and go, hey, this is your special, you love this toy, hey, look at it. So it distracts them long enough so you can get through. Have a fun story queued up. Some kids love stories, so if you have a fun story queued up to tell them, or songs that you sing with them. Play games like, hey, can you help me find the ketchup? It's red, it's in a bottle. You might have to be flexible on the stuff you come home with. Like, you know what? Is it worth picking and adding $3.50 worth of something you didn't really need just to keep them quiet? I think it is. And if you're really a stickler, you can always return it later. But those are the kind of things like, hey, can you go find this and get it with Heinz, this is whatever, this is not ketchup, this is catsup, whatever. Some of those you need some flexibility on. Remember to praise them as they're doing well early on. Know that there's a time limit. You can't push it. If you want to be successful, and there's I've heard of other stories of people doing other creative stuff at the grocery store.
Yeah, we definitely were throwing footballs in the grocery store with my son. I mean, it kept him distracted.
Right.
Hit you right in the hands every time, but when I started using the other shoppers as like blockers and stuff and trying to go behind them, my wife was not very happy about that. But speaking of time limits, let's go ahead and address some questions that we have from some of our live viewers. First of all, how do I get rid of my 19-month-old temper?
How do you get rid of a temper? I don't think that you can change a child's temperament. I think you have to know their temperament. So if they are a passionate child, you have to work around that. I think it's critical to understand that they are how they're made and embrace that and work around that. So you have to set the stage, knowing, hey, this is someone that is moving. These are the things that set them off. And so 19 months are often temperamental. Good luck with that, but also know that continue to focus on the positive, both for yourself and for them, knowing, hey, they're also passionate.
Right. I know one thing that we do, I've read a book called Whole Brain Child, which I will endorse to anybody. It talks about the different sides of the brain, and that the right side of the brain is not fully developed, and it's so emotional. So when a child is losing their temper, you have to control the emotion first. You do that by holding them and go up and embrace them. Right. And first get through the struggle and say, I feel this with you, even though they're totally irrational. And then once they're out of that state, you can address the actual problem at hand.
Yeah, you got to get past the fight or flight. That's a really good point. And then you did the next one you were saying here.
How do I get my 6-year-old not to be scared when alone?
Okay, so a lot of times it's important to find out what it is they're scared of. Are they scared of the dark? Are they scared that somebody's going to come in? Are they scared of imaginary monsters? A lot of times at age they have an active imagination. So it's really critical to find out what it is they're scared of and to help to address that in very creative ways. For kids that are scared of monsters, I've heard you make a monster spray.
Yeah.
And you say, hey, we're going to spray the room for monsters, and if you think you see one or hear one, here's your spray, it's by your bedside table. If they're scared of the dark, have a night light on. If they're scared of not being alone, you tell them, you start again with being with them through the bedtime routine, and then you tell them, I am right nearby, and I will come back and check on you. And initially, if they're extremely nervous, you check on them very quickly. You say, okay, I'm going to check on you in 2 minutes. And you get them used to, and you build up their endurance of being alone. So I'm going to check on you in 2 minutes. And then you say, you're fine. You come back in 2 minutes. Hey, everything's okay. I'm going to be back in 5 minutes. And eventually, over time, you build up their endurance because you help them push through their anxiety. And then you build up their endurance, the length of time that you're away, and eventually it's going to take a lot of investment, but eventually they can be alone longer because they've built that endurance. Anxiety is something that is important to know that you cannot, if you avoid the thing that makes them anxious, if you're like, hey, they're scared of being alone, so we're just going to be with them, you actually re-emphasize that anxiety and fear, and you make things worse, and that goes with any age. Treating anxiety involves pushing through the anxiety and giving them skills to push through the anxiety.
Excellent. Well, I think that we'll go ahead and end on that note. Obviously, we went a little bit longer than we usually do, but we're talking about toddlers. So that just takes a lot of stuff to dig into.
Wait, one more thing.
No, we're not doing the ADD podcast today, Dr. Cavanagh. So if you do want to schedule a consult with somebody like Dr. Cavanagh or one of our providers at Chisholm Trail Pediatrics, please make sure to give us a call so we can dig into your specific toddler situation. I want to thank everybody for listening in today. If you found us on Facebook, go ahead and give us that thumbs up or that like button. If you found us on YouTube, make sure to hit the bell and give us a thumbs up as well to support us. The best way you can support Chisholm Trail Pediatrics and Dr. Cavanagh is to go on Google or Yelp and give us a 5-star review if you are a patient of ours. Or if you want to become a patient of ours, like I said, please give us a call and schedule an appointment to establish care. The next podcast we're going to be doing is about sports physicals, because sports physical seasons is coming up soon, and we're going to be doing things like sports physical clinics on Saturdays, and we're really going to try and make sure all of our student athletes, whether you're 7th grade or a senior in high school, are healthy to participate in sports and different types of other activities like band and everything else. So keep an eye out for that. We'll try to have that towards the end of the month. I thank everybody for listening and watching today, and please have a good rest of your evening.
Turn your head and cough.